Hello. Today we'll be taking a Create React App application, implementing React Router, and rendering it on the server with Node.js. Let's get started. There's a few prerequisites. npm, of course. Node. We'll be using version 6.9.2 of Node, which is the latest LTS. We're going to be doing some things that are not possible on previous versions of Node, so I recommend you use this version. We'll also need a few things installed globally. Of course, Create React App. I'll be using the package manager Yarn. I recommend it also. You don't have to use Yarn. And we're also going to be using the Heroku command line interface to deploy this application. So cd into a directory that you want to keep this project. I'm just going to keep it on my desktop. So create React app and your application name. I'll be naming this tutorial. Create React app. Okay, I think I already have that folder. So I'm just going to remove it. Awesome. So our Create React app has finished doing its thing, installing. Let's cd into that directory, and let's start the development server. Okay, so here is our Create React app application. Great. So let's open this up in your text editor of choice. I'll be using Sublime. I recommend Sublime. And here's all the files and folders Create React app has created. We'll be messing with this folder structure a little bit, mainly where files are. I'm deleting test. We do not need it for this tutorial. I recommend you keep it. I just don't need it, and I tend to find it annoying. I'm also removing the test build script, which is in package.json. Okay, so let's open up index.js. I'm removing all semicolons. I'm not a huge fan. And let's install the React router. I'm going to open a new terminal tab. I'm going to be using yarn to install React router. Yarn add React router. Okay, this will be installing. So let's set up the routes when that's installed. I'll be using an arrow function. This will be a stateless component to hold all our routes. You need to import a few things from React Router. router, route, browser history, his story, index redirect, and index route, I think. Maybe we need that. So just setting up some preliminary paths. This will be the root path. This will be our 404 path. So I'm going to say all paths that, I'm going to say all paths. The root path will be caught earlier than this path. So index route, component. This will be our main component so far. So instead of passing an app to the React DOM render, we'll be passing the routes now. And for our 404 path, we're going to redirect to the index route. Great. We forgot 4. From. Oh, crucial mistake. We forgot browser history. That's an attribute on the router. It would help to spell correctly also. Great. So everything's working now. Let's check a 404 path and see if we're redirected to our root. And yes, we are. So now is the time to add another component into this. First, we're going to create a container component to host all our, to hold all our boilerplate of the components. It's going to be very similar to our app.js component. So the only thing that's going to be in our app.js component will be this p tag. I'm not going to bother naming this component. So I'm going to set this up how I prefer to set up components. You don't have to do this. I like doing React.component instead of requiring the component. I'm going to do the same with this component now. Once again, just personal preference. Cool. Now we've got to specify this in our routes that we're using this container. And this is how we accomplish that. And cool. It's looking the same as before, working the same as before. Let's add another component. We'll just name it custom. It will be almost identical to app.js. have to add a path onto this one. So we navigate to custom, we spell it right, and we navigate to custom, and it doesn't work. Did it compile? Oh, we're there. Let's start redirecting it. What did we do? Oh, okay, we index route. Do not label this one as index route. That was a mistake. Okay, so there's our app.js component. And here's our custom. Nice. So let's add some links between these so it's easier to navigate. We import this from React Router. Throw in a breakpoint. Line break, I mean. Awesome, we've just implemented React Router. Fantastic. So we're going to mess with the folder structure now. We can't do a couple things when we render using Node, such as import CSS files and import SVGs. We're not going to do that. We are going to import the CSS file still in a React application. We're just not going to do it where we do our routing. So first things first, let's take out all routing from index.js and create a single routing file, routes.js. We have to import React in here, of course. Export it. Export the routes. Should be working the same. Let's double check. Great. So once again, let's take out this app.css. Put it in our index.js. Looking great. And the logo now. And so we're going to move the logo entirely out of our source folder and put it into public. And we're just going to use a path. Awesome. So now our components are ready to be rendered on the server. Cool. So let's create a server folder. Create a file in there called index.js. Now we need to require a bunch of things. There's no imports here because we're using Node. Node 6.9.2 does not support import statements yet. I believe there's a Node version coming out sometime in April that does support it. So we have to use requires, which is fine. There's a problem with that though. When we require a file that uses imports and exports, our Node version can't handle that, so we need a dependency to handle that, which is import dash export. Our components also use JSX, so we need to require a few more things. Babel core. This is a function, Babel core / register. So let's throw some parameters at it. We need the ES 2015 preset and also the React preset for JSX. So let's install all this stuff. You can use npm. I will be using yarn. So go to our second tab we opened earlier. Yarn, add, import, export, Babel core, Babel preset, ES 2015, Babel preset React. So while that's doing its thing, we're going to set up more of our node boilerplate. We need some built-in things, some built-ins to Node. We need HTTP. We need FS, and we need one more path. We're going to be using Express with this tutorial. Let's get that too. And let's yarn install it. Yarn add Express. Of course, we need React. We also need React DOM server to render it on the server. I believe that's all we need. So let's set up some other variables we're going to be using. We're going to be using render to string to render our components to strings. That's a function within React DOM server. Let's go back to our routes file. This browser history causes some problems on the server. Node does not have all this browser history niceties, so we need to get a function that works around that for us. And this is called match. We get this from React Router, which I forgot to add. We'll need a base we'll need a base React element to render our server. This is called router context. We also get that from React Router. Now take note, this is all capitalized, camel case, match is lowercase. I think that's all we need. In our public file, we have our logo, index, favicon, nice. So when we do render to string on the server, we need to be putting that string into our index.html file and then sending it off to our client. We need to make sure we put that string in the right place. And we're going to do that by replacing this SSR string. I'm going to remove the comments too. And I'm going to close this tab and close this development server, and I'm going to kill the node process. Kill all -9 node. Now I'm going to build our production files, build our components, npm run build. This is a script you can find in package.json right here. It's a React script. It'll generate all this build folder stuff, niceties. It will optimize it. I don't know, a lot of nice things. Awesome. That's complete. So first things first, we need to serve up these static files, the logo, favicon, asset manifest, and our CSS in JavaScript. Let's do that in Node. So we're going to create an array and iterate through that array to serve all those static files. I'm going to call this static files. So everything from the static folder, and we specify everything with a little star symbol. We're also going to be serving up that logo SVG along with the asset manifest. And lastly, our favicon. So to serve up these files, we have to initiate our Express server. Create that server while passing in our application to it. And we have to tell Express we're going to be serving up static files and where from. Okay. Let's try and serve it up and see what happens. So for each of these items in this array, now this file will be one of these. Using the arrow functions. So if a user is trying to get this route, we're going to run this. Is it rec or res first? Never remember. I guess we'll get errors if we get it wrong. So we're going to serve up the file that the user is trying to get. We do that by res.sendFile. Let's get that file name or file path first. And the user can just have whatever they're requesting, rec.url. Okay, let's tell the command line interface that we're now serving this. Okay, so if there is a port specified, we're going to use that port. If there is not, we're going to use the port 8080, which I use as a default for everything. You can do whatever you want here. 1, 2, 3, 4 works fine. I like 8080. App server.listen. Okay, let's console log that we're listening. Address is a function. And I think we're good to go. Let's try it out, see what happens. We run the node server by typing in node and wherever the server exists. And of course, our root route doesn't do anything yet. Let's try and get that logo. And it's working. Awesome. Now comes the fun part. We're going to render our application on the server. So for all other routes, we're going to run through this function. Of course, we have to grab that index.html. And let's make sure we have our SSR. Yep, that's what we're going to be replacing with our server-side rendered application. fs. Wait, now we need the path first. fs.readFile is the function. I can't remember. Now we need to specify a type of encoding. We'll be using UTF-8, the standard. And this is a function with two parameters, error and HTML data. Awesome. So if there's an error, we're going to tell the user somehow, or us. Let's make an error function. We're going to be using this a couple more times. Oh wait, so this function gets rec and res, not URL. So res, we're going to set the status as 404 if we reach an error, and we're going to send back a string 404. Great. So if there's an error, we're going to run through that. Otherwise, we're going to render our application on the server. So like I said, browser history is going to pose a problem for us. We solve that problem by matching our routes with whatever location the user is requesting. And we send a function with 3 parameters over. Those parameters are error, redirect, and our server-side rendered data. So we didn't require our route, so let's do that now. This is a little bit tricky. There's a little annoyance here. Routes are in our source folder, routes. Now, this file does not use imports or exports. So when we're requiring a file that does and it exports defaults, we'll need to call that default function. Also, one more thing to make note of, this cannot be capitalized. It has to be lowercase. Routes has to be lowercase. So if there's an error, you can hit that error function. Else, if there's a redirect, we're going to redirect the user. I believe we do that by res.redirect 302, and there's some things here. Redirect path name, either path or path name, and redirect.search. I think. We'll find out if that's wrong. But if there's server-side rendered data, we're going to be doing the cool server-side rendering. Otherwise, let's hit that error function. Cool, so let's get our React app. Let's render it to string. Now our React element is going to be that router context. And we'll need to pass that server-side rendered data to it. Using the spread operator for this object. Now we can't do this because we do not have JSX on the server. At least not in this file. Babelcore/registered allows us to use it in other files, just does not allow us to use it in our actual index file. So we'll be using react.createElement. Router context, server-side rendered data. Now we'll be able to get our rendered application. Let's take that HTML data and replace that string we created earlier with our React app. Awesome. All should be well here. So let's tell the application that. Send a status of 200 over. and send our rendered app. Okay. Let's run it, see what happens. I'm going to kill all previous node processes and start the server. Something did not work. Let's block the JavaScript for this website. And we have this SSR right here. We should have, oh, that's SRR. Let's go back to our public folder, open up that index.html, and make that SSR. So kill all previous node processes. Let's rebuild all our files. npm run build. All right. Start it up one more time. See what happens. And great. So once again, no JavaScript is running on this website right now, our localhost 8080. We're blocking it. So we go to our custom component, and that works. Let's see if the redirecting has worked. And yep, we go to our route, our index route. Awesome. We've done it. So let's deploy it. I'm going to deploy it using Heroku. Super easy. So first of all, make an account, sign in. I'm going to create a new application. Name it whatever. Tutorial December 2016. So first of all, we need to initialize our project with Git. We need to add this repository. Now, a long time ago, when I installed the Heroku command line interface, I messed up, and I have to use sudo from now on. Awesome. So let's add all our files. Let's make a generic commit message. Oh, I made a mistake. Before we actually deploy it, we need to make some changes. So Heroku will automatically, I'm deleting the README, we do not need it. Heroku will use the start script, and we do not want it running the development server. So let's rename our start script to dev. What we do want Heroku to run is our node server. And we also want to make sure Node is using the same version of, we also want to make sure Heroku is using the same version of Node that we are. When we do that with engines in the package.json, Node 6.9.2. Let's double check that real quick. Yep. Okay. We should be good to go. Oh, one more thing. Let's not ignore our build folder. We're going to be deploying that too. Those host the static files that we're going to be serving up. So git add all. And let's push that up to Heroku. Awesome. Let's see if it worked out. Let's turn off JavaScript, make sure everything worked out on the server. The page reloads between components. Turn it back on, make sure the routing is working fine. Awesome, we've done it. We have deployed our server-side rendered React application. That's it.